Hi everyone, welcome to Casual Watch Talks Sunday Social. Joined by the panel. Thanks everyone for joining me. Should we do a quick wristwatch check to kick us off? Pete, you're in the hot seat. What are you wearing?
I am wearing the. Is that going to focus?
Oh, nice.
Alpina. Yep, we can see it.
Yeah, Alpina Extreme integrated bracelet.
Very nice.
Their input into that genre of watches. It's not even copying anymore. It's just a genre. Is the blue dialed integrated steel sports bracelet.
Right, and this is the only watch with a bracelet that you think is legitimately needs a bracelet, or the only one you like.
unless the bracelet is physically almost impossible to remove from the watch. It's just an accessory that should be removed.
Oh dear. Okay. On that bombshell, Dave, what are you wearing?
What am I wearing? Let me just change my camera. I am wearing Universal Genève.
Oh.
This is a 211202-8, which is a little 1962, I think it is. 35mm, 8mm thick. Little beauty.
Very nice.
In immaculate condition as well. Managed to pick this up before the values go absolutely ludicrous when they're bought over by Scheitling. So, this is a pretty clean little one with a champagne dial. So I think I paid the grand sum of around £400 for this. So not exactly super expensive. And it runs like a little sweetie as well.
Oh, great. Awesome.
So that's what I am wearing.
Excellent. Mark, you're up next.
I have a Formex Essence Legera, which has the disadvantage of being quite reflective right now. This is the 41mm on the rubber strap with their so clever deployment clasp with the adjustment in it. And this is a watch, I must admit, that Pete McConville was right about. The case suspension system does nothing. But it's a nice gimmick. But it doesn't, now I've had it and worn it, its motion is restricted to the vertical, and the springing is very stiff. So it's not going to do much, but it's a nice gimmick.
What's going on here now? That I'm losing my sponsorship opportunities with Formex and Breitling already. We've been going 30 seconds.
We're independent. We're
We're staying that way. But it is a lovely watch. It's very light. The design is modern. And to hurt the sponsorship opportunities even more, they could do with more loom. But other than that, it's a great little piece.
No, I'm hoping actually to get a Formex in. I do like the brand, but anyway. Todd,
I am wearing another really fun estate sale find I got. So this is a proper 70s integrated bracelet. Pete, There's no way I could ever put a strap on this one because of that connection. I don't think. It's a Croton. It's a Swiss made, new old stock. I mean, there's not even a scratch. It even came in the original box. Price tag.
Nice.
Very
cool. This is a fun little cat find.
I feel like we needed that intro, the available Inglorious Technicolor thing before you showed the watch.
For sure. The original price was $99.50.
Awesome! Wow. I'm wearing my square G-Shock. I got a lot of questions after my State of the Watch collection about the rubber band that I'd upgraded it to. So I might have to do a video on it. My camera packed up on the original time, but I will. I'll do another one. I'll take it back. I'll take it off and put it back on again, and we'll do a video. But everyone just has to act like it was the first time they'd seen it. Okay.
Did you ever find your second glove, Sam?
I've got both gloves. There's like an obsession here. Let me. I've got one Jaeger LeCoultre glove here, and then another. Actually, they're looking a bit tatty, but that's the only Jaeger LeCoultre that I own is a pair of now off-white color gloves. I had to.
The mind absolutely boggles at that comment.
I know.
It's yeah. So they're my. They were originally. But anyway, right. Okay. So I thought last year we'd done a predictions video, but I think we did one, but we were just bad mouthing Hodinki's predictions. So maybe this is our first predictions video, and then we'll look back on it next year and laugh about stuff that we got wrong. But also let us know in the panel if you've got any predictions for what's going to happen in the watch industry this year. I've got a couple to go through, but I don't know if anybody else, before I start my launching into my ones, anybody else have a prediction they wanted to kick off with for the panels?
I mean, I'm predicting that Seiko will launch 25 more limited editions.
A week.
25. What is that, January? Is that January? Or is that the year we're talking about here?
Oh, right.
We could do a round of our kind of joke predictions. Like, I'm going to have a prediction that Tudor will release another very nice series of Rolex homage watches.
But not a mill sub.
Yes, everything but the mill sub. Well, it's somebody commented on my one of my videos about they're waiting for the Tudor the Seiko Enthusiast edition with a misaligned bezel. I think Seiko needs to come up with some kind of story around misaligned bezels, don't they? About when you're at 100 feet of water, your perception's off, so they slightly askew the bezel, so it corrects itself because of the
I think their story is. I think their story is going to be much more straightforward. If you care about it, you should be using the bezel, and it should therefore never be at 12.
There you go.
Actually, here's another one for Tudor. Given that they like to put weird metals into their watch cases, reactive metals like silver, so they're going to make a lithium alloy dive watch so that it catches fire as soon as it gets wet.
Okay, maybe we've gone down the wrong path here. Maybe I should have prepped a little bit more.
Oh yeah.
But,
there's nothing like car crash TV, Sam.
Yeah, exactly. We'll pull it back. We'll pull it back from the break. So, well, first of all, what do we think the plasticization process is going to happen to this year from Swatch? We obviously had the Moon Swatch, and then the 50 Fathoms Swatch, the Scuba. What do we think? I mean, the obvious choice is the Omega Seamaster, isn't it? But is there anybody think otherwise? Or
absolutely. I don't think the Seamaster will happen.
Okay.
I reckon I'll go Breguet. The obvious would be a Type 20, but they could do a Traditional.
Why would they do Breguet? I mean, it's even less known.
Same reason they did Black Pawn.
Because you're looking at it the wrong way round. You're looking at this as if it's Breguet or Blancpain trying to sell swatches, when it's actually Swatch trying to sell Breguets and Blancpains.
Yeah.
And Blancpain has, if you do a Google search on how often has Blancpain been searched on as a Google word search, it increased like 300% this year. The 50 Fathoms is the Swatch 50 Fathoms collab, cheapest. In fact, it's a profit-making marketing campaign. And they'll do the same for Breguet.
I think it actually had more to it than that as well, because Swatch as a brand, as in Swatch Watch, was slowly but surely circling the bath plug, and had been for the best part of 10 years minimum. It had just slowly been going downhill, and come COVID, it really put the knife in the back of it, because so many of them are sold in airports and in travel and all of these kind of things, that they were in dire straits. And as Pete says, it's a clever marketing move. It gets the knownness of the other brand names that they have out into the marketplace, because people go, oh, what's that? Oh, look, that's a 10K, 20K watch. Oh, I can buy one for a couple of $100. Okay, good. And you sell Swatch watches. But in turn, the whole in-store narrative isn't for no reason. It's to get people into Swatch stores to see what else Swatch Watch make, and remind people that Swatch Watch is a thing, and look at all these other pretty shiny watches that we make, and all these kid watches and the flick flacks and everything else. And it has driven sales of Swatch watch back up, not just of those items, but of other generic Swatch watches as well. So it's done two things. My prediction is they won't do one this year. I think they'll just ease back a little bit from it. You know, I think they will let moon swatches are still selling like Billio. You know, you can get them reasonably easily now. But if they weren't selling, they wouldn't still have pride of place in the window and in the main kind of vitrines in any Swatch store. If they weren't doing it, they'll start to slowly expand it out across the platform of Swatch watch, and it will probably end up online at some point this year. And also the same for the 50 Fathoms. It will generally spread across all the stores, and they'll use this year to mop up all of the residual demand for that type of product. Then they'll take stock about what they do. I don't think you'll see another model anyway. You might see some special editions, some weird colours, more of that whole, you know, moonshine gold thing going on as well. But I think that's as much as you'll see. I think they're not daft. They'll not over-egg it too hard.
I actually agree with Dave. I think it'll come. If it does come, it'll be in 2025. Because I think there was about 18 months difference, wasn't there, between the Swatch, the Moon Swatch, and the Blanc Pont? So I think it'll be 18 to 24 months will be the gap.
And you think it's going to be a Breguet?
I reckon it'll be a Breguet.
Okay.
And we were talking about it before, and it has to be one of their more upmarket watches. It's not going to be like a Hamilton or one of those other brands. It's got to be a brand that's an aspirational piece to then go down to a Swatch.
And also Hamilton and Longines, for example, whilst their volumes have dropped, as have everyone's volumes, just because of the global kind of economy and everything else, those brands aren't exactly struggling. And you know, actually, when you think you've got a Hamilton at $500-600, why would you make a plastic version for maybe half that? You know, $200-300. It would just stop. It would actually stop people buying the actual real product, which kind of defeats the purpose. You need that thousands of dollars differentiation to justify what they're doing there. But I tell you a prediction I will see coming in that. It's a big sporting event coming that you know, the Swatch Group have lots of money involved with. I guarantee you're going to see Olympic edition moon swatches, guarantee it. And you will probably see some aquatic swimming Olympic related paraphernalia out of Swatch watch, because they'll do all the Swatch watch Olympic editions, and I guarantee you it'll either be event focused or just Paris Olympics in general or something around that. You'll see lots of that this year, and Omega will absolutely nail the Olympics to death.
Yeah, and because so they've done the Seamaster Paris, you know, allegedly only available in Paris. Normally they do more than that, so that might, you know, there'll be 2 or 3 months beforehand. You'll see another. They've done Seamasters, they've done Speedmasters. So.
Yeah, but and if you think for those moon swatches, you know, they've done the whole moons thing. Olympic events or whatever their narrative is, it's just ripe for the plucking, that one.
Yeah, you could do, they're cheap enough that you could actually do a dial per, like, athletics, field, you'd have swimming and soccer, and there's about 12, I reckon, that you could stand on and sell them at the venues.
Yep, exactly. I think that's what they'll do, and they'll make it that unobtainable again, that you have to actually get off your hiney and go out and actually hunt for them, you know, and that's part of driving that whole narrative. And there'll be, if there's not a gold, silver, bronze edition and all of these kind of things as well, I'll be amazed, but they will absolutely milk that to death. And fair play, why would you not? Because it's not exactly cheap for them to sponsor the Olympics.
Yeah,
that's a great call.
What do we think? Rolex might do this year? I don't know how I thought of this. I kind of woke up this morning thinking, I wonder if they would do kind of like a gold alloy with titanium, because they seem to be all in with. I don't know if the two can be mixed, but it seems like if they can be, they might come up with like a titanium watch with gold in it, or like a gold titanium alloy.
There's definitely been that. Grand Seiko have done some truly horrific gold and titanium and ceramic and gold and titanium watches over the years, and they are just horrific.
You don't think that? Because I was thinking, I wonder whether Rolex might do something like a two-tone titanium and gold. I think that's a stretch too far.
At the pace they move, I can't imagine they're going to make a move that far afield in 1 year's time. They did a lot last year, and I feel like a big move.
I'd be unsurprised. I'm not going to predict this, but I'd be unsurprised if they do something else with their titanium. You know, they brought out that ludicrous titanium dive watch this year. Would they go as far as doing a titanium Submariner? Probably not, but I wouldn't fall over dead if they did. I think they might do something.
Or a Sea Dweller, because that's the only complaint about the Sea Dweller, isn't it? That it's a bit of a chunk, it's a bit chunky.
Yeah. Kind of like the James Cameron thing.
I don't think Rolex will do a lot this year. Last year was a big year for them. They introduced they opened up a lot of opportunities for themselves last year. But A, they don't do a lot that fast. And B, as everyone's thinking, 2024 will probably be a slightly slower year. So why do a lot? But I think the three opportunities they opened up for themselves last year were one, using titanium more, so there's a chance that titanium could turn up. Two, killed off the Cellini, brought up a new watch, which is much more what is it, 1908, I think it was. Is that, did I get that right? I wouldn't be surprised to see that starting to turn up with complications. And equally, I think Rolex has realized what the Daytona is now. That's why they brought out their first Daytona. A, they made it look backwards a little bit more. B, they gave it a display case back. I wouldn't be surprised, not predicting it, but if it happens, I'll go, oh yeah, I can understand that. If we see something like the Jean-Paul Keely annual calendar version of the Daytona.
Interesting.
I can give you two hard and fast things that Rolex will absolutely definitely do, and I'll eat my hat if they don't. One, they'll buy a lot of property, and two, they'll make a lot of money.
Yeah. That's actually a really good question. Everyone talks about Rolex as being an independent company, but isn't it just a company owned by a real estate trust? I mean, the real estate would have to be worth
foundation.
Yeah, the real estate business would have to be worth multiples of the watch business by now.
Oh, aye, and the rest.
Yeah, so it's really a real estate company that sells watches.
Yeah. Let's see what the audience is saying. So Bill says, Pete seems like you may be muted. I know we're just going along with it. We can't hear Pete either.
He's not muted.
Yeah, agree.
He's not muted. He's just far away.
It's got the smoke has a long way to go through the pipes.
Yeah, thanks for checking in, Bill. Then SJ saying Rolex disappointed in 2023 by not doing an anniversary Submariner.
I actually think, not that I'm a Rolex fan by any stretch of the imagination, I think actually this year was one of the more upbeat years for them, to be honest. They did a couple of cheeky little things, you know, with the bubbles dial and the jigsaw puzzle nonsense and the emoji watch, and they brought out that ludicrous titanium diver and a few other things, you know. So they actually did some things for Rolex a little bit out the box as far as I'm concerned, you know, like by no means in any other brand would just be like, yeah, okay, it's something, but you know, for them they did something a little bit out of the ordinary. And they brought out that Daytona 100, didn't they, as well?
Yeah.
And don't forget that Rolex's big sellers aren't the subs or the Daytonas. It's the Oyster Perpetuals and stuff like that, the day dates.
OPs and date justs.
Yeah, according to Chrono24, the date just is the single most sold watch on their platform.
Oh, wow.
So,
I can believe that.
Oh, yeah. So I think I've seen one analysis that says when you consider the lady date just as well, the date just makes up over 50% of Rolex sales.
Easy.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that means 500,000 date justs a year being sold.
Yeah.
It's like a limited edition run for Seiko.
Yeah.
Almost, yeah.
To be honest, you can work it out. If you know your Rolex movements, all you need to do is go and look at the Costco records and see how many of each movement goes through Costco a year. And that'll give you a pretty good guide as to what's been made.
Yeah, I think that's how they do it.
Yeah. So we went through that. I mean, it's hard to predict what Grand Seiko will do, but
A lot of limited
SJ
editions.
Yeah, SJ
Yeah.
was saying that he's wearing his Seiko LX Prospect, which I've always been super interested in, but that seems like a line that they don't really do that much with anymore. I think they could have really explored that. Maybe it blurs a lot of lines, doesn't it? Because it's like a
They tried really hard with them, to be honest, about
all right.
4 years ago, maybe something like that,
I
4 or
do like
5 years ago. They've always done them in Japan, always, but they do. There's a lot of Seiko spring drives in Japan. Like there's quite a lot of things like tunas and high end Seiko branded, not Grand Seiko, pure Seiko branded watches. And LX was this weird because Grand Seiko is very much, they don't really do sports watch in the traditional sense of sports watches. You know, they've got a couple that you might class as sportier, but most of them are dressier rather than sportier. And LX was meant to be this kind of hybrid between Seiko and high-end Seiko and Grand Seiko, where you had these very divey, sporty, chunky watches that didn't really fit the aesthetic of Grand Seiko, but they wanted to do a premium product with that chunky dive type aesthetic. So, you know, Submariner-esque or high-end Rolex dive, high-end Omega dive watch-esque. And they were really nice, but the problem was they were all 5, 6, 7, 8,000 euros, dollars, pounds. And people in Europe, certainly, and in the US typically turned their nose up and went, if I'm spending that, it better say Grand Seiko on it, not Seiko. So they just kind of didn't happen. In fact, to the point where Seiko or Seiko Group Europe were actually selling them at half price and actually said to dealers, any inventory you've got, sell them at half retail price and we'll recompense. They even recompensed the dealers for lost profit when they sold them. That's how badly they did in Europe and the US. But they still sell a huge range of them and they sell well in Japan by all accounts. But
Yeah,
if you
I
want
didn't
them in
see.
Europe now, it's special order.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't
It's
see any
also
in Japan.
It also happens. There was going back to when the LX came out. There was also some interviews done with the CEO of Seiko, and there were some changes being done on their website, which I've noticed have now unwound. So for back then, they changed the way the like prospects and presage were presented, and they weren't presented as collections; they were presented as brands.
Yep.
So prospects was a brand, and I think there was a time where what they were looking at doing is essentially turning Seiko into Swatch and Presage and all of those others as totally independent brands from each other.
Well, they're still pushing that, Pete. They're pushing that harder now than ever. Yeah, certainly in Europe, even in the last 6 months, they've started doing subtle but pretty meaningful market research into, is this a Seiko or is this is this a Seiko Prospects or is this a Prospects? And they were trying to define, do people see Prospects as like a category within Seiko, or do they see it as it's a Prospects? And they're very much trying to push the narrative of, you've got Seiko, low end. You've got Seiko 5 as like a little sub-brand. You've got Prospects. You've got, Landward, which you don't see that much in Europe, but it's a category, almost as sub-brands in the same way as they hived off Grand Seiko from the main family as well.
Yeah. I think they went really hard on it a couple of years ago. They wound back on the forward-facing stuff. So, for example, if you go to the Seiko website, certainly in Australia, Prospects is no longer a brand. It's back being called a collection. But utterly unsurprised that they're going to have another go at that thing.
The flagship Seiko store in Ginza in Tokyo, it's like a department store, and each level is a different. You've got a Presage level, like the entire floor is nothing but that, and they present it as the brand. And the Astron as well, which we didn't mention, but Astron is a brand. And then the bottom floor is the Prospects or Prospects for somebody that's going to comment that we're saying it wrong.
They kind of need to do that to a certain extent as well, though, because the big problem they've got is when you bundle it all together as Seiko, you've got super low-end volume retailers of Seiko. So, your catalogue stores. So in the UK terms, people like, Argos or H. Samuel or these kind of real not even jewelers necessarily, just places that you can buy watches, department stores, all of these things. But because it's all bundled together, it's quite difficult for them to then not allow those retailers to have access to anything that says Seiko on it. So they almost want to hive it off so that, the more premium product is only available as a brand to a more premium retail avenue, which helps them control price, marketing, etc. So they're desperate to do it. As to whether it will stick, that's a very different question.
And don't Citizen kind of have the same problem?
A Citizen have got a million problems. That's just one of them.
Yeah.
But they've got the. I mean, but have they though? Because Citizen's got they've obviously got their the Eco Drive, like their Pro Diver range. So that's its own thing. And then, I mean, their high end stuff you could argue is like Frederic Constant. Would you say? Or I mean, it's a brand within a.
I was thinking just within Citizen, because if you go to and use Sakura Japan as a good example, you can sort by you can sell by Eco Drive, or they sell by Eco Drive, or whether it's automatic. Then you've got about 10 different lines from Pro Master, the Citizen. Is a Tessa a line?
The Tessa's a line. Yeah.
No.
It's
exactly. You've got like Series 9. You've got the One range. You've got Pro Diver. You've got all these. They've actually got more subcategories or families than even Seiko have, to be honest with you.
I think it's 10 or 12. It's a lot.
Easily. More. And that's only the ones that you see outside Japan. If you actually look at the Japanese catalogue, it just
probably 16
absolutely eventually grows. But they've got the same problem, because you've got super low end, couple of $100 Citizens, which are perfectly nice watches. There's nothing wrong with them, but they're mass channel watches. And then you've suddenly got even some of their like Eco Drive divers, but they've got a $4,000 price tag on them. And technically they're available because it's just a Citizen, and that's where the big problem they've got is even their premium stuff, which is, I would say, comparable with entry level Grand Seiko, but it's just Citizen. They've never had this, whatever you want to call it, Super Citizen or Grand Citizen or Super Citizen.
But they tried it. They tried it 5, 6, 7 years ago, and it failed. At least in the US, it failed dismally.
Yeah, but they've not done the legwork like Seiko have. Yeah. Seiko started early, and they worked it. I mean, everyone's got to remember, Grand Seiko was like dog dirt for decades. Nobody took it seriously as a premium watch in terms of, if you even tried to compare it to something like Tag Heuer, folk kind of laughed at you as if it's just a Seiko, isn't it? It took them a long, long time, a lot of money and a lot of dedication, and a lot of just sticking with the same story before they got to where they wanted to get to.
Yeah, they hit what you call the hockey stick, didn't they? It all of a sudden, Grand Seiko became a serious brand.
Yeah. After 20 years of hard work, I became an overnight success.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was.
If you remember in the US, how long were they having Hodinkee effectively?
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to say, how long was Hodinkee shilling it? Yeah.
By paying a serious amount of wedge over to them to just constantly, and you had Jack Forster, and okay, Jack Forster quite likes the brand anyway, but it didn't do them any harm that he also shilled it to death via that platform as well. So, that in the US, certainly, that's definitely helped. And they did the market research, get rid of Seiko and the dials.
Yeah, the stores. I've got a good friend who he worked for a company that fitted the Rodeo Drive Grand Seiko store, and he said that like it was no expense spared. Like the wooden stuff that they used was like the premium that they could get at the time, and they had like custom glass made that hardly any. When you fit in a shop, they went like above and beyond to present that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yet the Grand Seiko boutique in New York, at least the one on up where where all the watch boutiques is kind of small and pokey.
Yeah, the one in Soho. Did we go to one? I went to one in Soho with Helen. That was quite big. It kind of opens up. It's kind of small at the front, and then it opens up at the back. Is that what you're thinking of?
The one that's on Avenue of the Americas around 50th, 60th from memory is kind of small and pokey.
Yeah, the one in Tokyo is the actual dedicated Grand Seiko store that isn't the big one.
It was the same in the UK though. They finally decided to open a boutique in the UK in London, And, you know, at the end of the day, if you want a serious boutique or to be taken seriously, it pretty much has to be in New Bond Street. That's just the narrative. But they didn't quite fully commit, and they put one out nearer towards Harrods, where there's a couple of like sub-boutiques, if you want to call them that. Gave it a couple of years, seemed to work, and all of a sudden, boom, in the last year, they've opened a massive multi-floor boutique on New Bond Street. And again, go in, it's got Grand Seiko floor, it's got Prospects floor, it's got, you know, the whole shooting match, and they've thrown everything they've got at it. But it's taken off, you know, so shows you the difference.
That's one to put on the list for the next UK visit.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Next prediction, I think I know the answer to this, but it's too early to see anything from Universal Genève, isn't it, under Breitling, I'm guessing?
Not for this year.
Yeah,
I don't think you'll hear anything till 25, 26. It'll just go quiet.
So we got
excited about it though. Excited about to see what they can do, because it's a great brand.
How
start saving, you'll need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, they're going to be hyper expensive.
Yeah. So, well, I'll ask the panel then. Which brand are you most excited for this year? Then maybe flip the question. I don't know.
Well, someone just put it in the comments, and I'm kind of with them. I'm rooting for Tag, and I want to see more. They had some really nice releases this year. They're great looking pieces. I'd love to see what more they can do.
Yeah, and the Sun's taken over the full of LVMH now, hasn't he?
Oh yeah, well, they've also just you've also got a shuffle of seats in CEO as well. You know, so maybe somebody who's done a very good job with Zenith over the last couple of years might actually suddenly put a bit of fire into Tag's belly, which would be nice to see, to be honest, you know, because I think as much as they've had a couple of funky things, 2023, you know, the glass box and stuff, none of it, to be honest, was exactly setting the world on fire, you know. It was they were quite nice, but it was very much a little salt and pepper on what he already had. So it'd be interesting to see if they can kind of get a bit of fire in their belly and do something interesting.
I think to that end, I guess, but they were kind of for a while the world at large, no, not the world at large, the watch collecting community were like, oh man, Tag's a joke, they're awful, and they kind of made this pivot, like they were listening to the customers because they're putting in some in-house movements now, and they're kind of trying to readjust and become that brand that when I was a kid was, you know, it was like Tag and Rolex, like those were the premium brands, and I'd love to see them get back there.
To be honest, though, that's also expected. At the end of the day, if you think of all the brands that fall under that house, they are the bottom of the pile in regards to pecking order of the brands within that house.
Yeah.
And it's more a matter of the growth of that overall watch business within that house and the industrialization of certain movements that have trickled down through the range and suddenly are being made available effectively to Tag when you have the other brands moving on to something newer and greater. It's the same as you look at Richemont, you know, look at all the brands in there. The high-end brands have always done their own thing. But, you know, like IWC, not that long ago, plenty of the watches used ETA movements or derivatives of in their watches, and now pretty much in fact, I think everything in IWC is in-house. And you look at Mont Blanc is slowly but surely transitioning to the in-house pattern movements as opposed to using predominantly Sellita-based stuff. Yes, there's still some Sellita stuff there. Give it another couple of years at Mont Blanc, because again, bottom of the pecking order as far as Richemont Group goes. It's the same for Tag as well. So I think it was a natural business progression. I don't honestly think that's really been driven by customer demand. That's been driven by the economics of the greater group.
Yeah, I don't think movements are driven much by customer demand. I agree completely with Dave. I think if you look at 2023, what brands did something interesting and are therefore I think likely to keep doing something interesting, I agree with Todd. I think Tag has some momentum. I think Longines is a good chance to do something interesting this year. I don't know what that will be. I'm going to make no predictions, but people with the Spirit collection, they sort of found a new leg. And And now people are starting to not only look at the Spirit collection, but they're now looking at the Master collection and all these other things that no one ever paid any attention to. So I think Longines are one to watch.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got Longines, Tag. Anybody else?
I guarantee you Omega have got a more exciting year ahead of them as well. For pretty much the same reason we've said. You know, they had a relatively, we talked about this, I think, a couple of weeks back. They had a pretty quiet 2023. A couple of colour collections and a couple of little bits here and there, but nothing, absolutely nothing to write home about other than that Blow Prof, which of course will sell a mere handful
200
of because of what it is. But they've been keeping their powder dry. It's Olympic year, so there's going to be a plethora of Olympic orientated stuff.
Well, they're going to, apparently they're going to start off with the white Speedmaster in January, which everybody will be hustling for. If you're patient,
comment.
But if you're patient, should be in the stores as a series watch that there's no queues for by October, November.
Think more along the lines of in about 4 weeks.
Yeah.
It's officially being launched on the 17th of January, I think it is.
That seems like the date that was. It's about that date that was
17th of January. There's a huge
by my boutique.
There's a huge event happening in Bern and Biel for 2 days, and that's when that watch. It was deliberately been leaked, and it's going to be super cool, but it's going to be very mainstream. Let me put it like that. It's going to be a volume player for them.
Yeah, it's a series production watch.
Yeah, and what they need, along with other brands, is something that people want and will actually buy at a price that will be relatively attainable by a reasonable number of people. Because the biggest thing that's going to happen this year is it's going to be difficult for lots of people. It's going to be a tough year because volumes are dropping, prices are going up. People don't have the spends that they used to have over the last couple of years. The whole bubble of watches post COVID is firmly burst now, and brands need guaranteed sellers. And a white dialed Speedy at Speedy money is probably sure a seller as Omega are likely to ever come up with in the next couple of years.
And there's that, and I wonder, although if you've got the Olympics, probably not, whether you'd see them redo the Seamaster. They have Spirate. They've now seemingly, at least to some extent, figured out how the new movement technology can be manufactured. It's been 6 years since they last updated the Seamaster. There wasn't much happening with it last year. I wonder if this year might be the Seamaster year, but as you say, there's the Olympics, and you might lose the Seamaster launch in the Olympics.
Tapered bracelet. Watch this space.
But I like the Seamaster bracelet as it is.
Hand on heart, I'm the same. It's like I've had a Seamaster with that ugly bracelet for decades, in fact, and I find it perfectly comfortable. But there is definitely a push. You saw it with Speedmaster. Everyone wanted the taper increased. They did it. I actually agree. I actually believe that it's to the detriment of the comfort of that watch, frankly, because it's too narrow now at the clasp. But it is 100% coming for Seamaster.
Yeah.
It's always
may not have seen some pictures in October.
I was going to say, I was going to say, Dave has definitely seen pictures.
I must admit, particularly when I've got my watch review hat on, I always find it interesting when you look at a watch like the Seamaster and say, what would make sense from a business perspective is to give it a tapering bracelet. That's what everyone wants. But personally, I like the straight bracelet. Or, it makes a lot of sense to make this watch smaller. But personally, I like it. I like it bigger. It's just, there's all these, sometimes it's interesting where what you would personally like and what makes business sense are two completely different things.
It's a roller coaster of emotions.
I mean, if they make the Seamaster a 39 millimeter, there's a sales consultant in a New Jersey Omega boutique who's going to have a real bad year.
I mean, if there is, obviously people people will be tightening the belts next year, as we've just discussed. Do you think that we'll see a resurgence of some micro brands, or do you think that the micro brands will suffer as well because they're obviously more
I think the
affordable?
micro brands
I
are
don't-
in just as much trouble.
Yeah, I don't think you'll necessarily see more micro brands, because if you want to start a brand, small or big, you need the money, and you know most of these people are not any different. I think you'll see some of the micro brands. Actually, you'll see probably more go away than emerge by a country mile. You'll see some of the good ones who've actually done their homework and have half a brain in their head and have built some degree of business plan around their doings. You know, people like what's his name? Studio Underdog, Rich.
Yep.
Rich has got his head screwed on. You know, he's done well, but he's also very cognizant of the fact that it could easily disappear, and he's actually channeling money into sensible avenues. You know, brands like Fears that have got a business acumen behind them, but there's lots that are just flying by the seat of their pants, literally.
This is
you
say
know, they
that
will in problem.
we didn't really cover this in the trends video we did last year, but micro brands are a sort of declining trend. You don't see as many new micro brands. There are those that have managed to survive the last 2 or 3 years, but you're not seeing them come through like, you know, mushrooms every morning. They're not sprouting up as anything like they used to.
Maybe in the US. I mean, I still get hit up a lot about micro brands, but not many that are originating in the US. You know, not or you know, Western micro brands, I would say.
Yeah, I got a feeling there's like two things that have kind of making it hard for new micro brands. One is that the expectations of a micro brand on release have risen and risen and risen. A friend of mine that was talking about creating a micro brand for about 3 years was saying every year he regretted it that he didn't do it a year earlier, because this year it costs twice as much to do it as it did last year. You know, once upon a time, you could have a rough idea of what you wanted to do, go on Kickstarter, have Kickstarter kind of finance the final development. Now you need to have had everything absolutely sorted and probably be able to pay for like the first production run before you go on Kickstarter. You've got to have probably had 50 watches made and sent to people, and you had to be prepared to give those away to even get coverage. So that's the first thing. I think the cost of entry has just gone through the roof. And the second thing is that the early micro brands have refused to leave the party and won't stop calling themselves micro brands. If I see one more video having Christopher Ward as a micro brand to watch,
right?
And
I agree.
There are companies out there now that don't fit a single metric of being a micro brand. They have full-time staff, they have inventory, they have constant, they sell, you know, thousands, if not tens of thousands of watches a year, and yet they're still running around calling themselves or acting like we're micro brands. We're the little guy out here to help you.
Like the Yema with their continual Kickstarters.
Yeah.
I mean, Christopher Ward are arguably one of the best run, most profitable, most professional watch brands in the market.
And
whether you like what they do or not, whether you like what they do or not, whether you like the aesthetic, whether you like the price point they play in is irrelevant. They're an extremely professional, well-run business, and they are as far from a micro brand. There's actually big brands owned by the big groups that are more micro brand than Christopher Ward have been for probably 20 years. They're just, you know, and Christopher Ward don't pretend to be a micro brand. I think it's people who got into Christopher Ward a long time ago at the very start are still desperately clinging by their fingernails to the idea that it's some kind of like funky little startup brand, in the same way as folk that get into Grand Seiko 20 years ago still like to believe that Grand Seiko is the little secret of the watch world, when in fact it's on every high street in the Western world. You know, it's living with these kind of rose-tinted spectacles, to be honest with you.
And looking at, you know, spending a lot of time on the Christopher Ward forum Dave's absolutely right. There is a lot of nostalgia for a brand that they are no longer. You know, people crying that you can't buy a £300 quartz Christopher Ward anymore. They'd be out of business.
Yeah, but
Well,
I think that
you only need to look at Switzerland. They own a significant manufacturer in Switzerland. They, like, name me another micro brand that owns anything in Switzerland. Never mind anything else.
Yeah. So I think that acts as a massive barrier to new watch brands, that you're effectively thrown in the market with, you're like that 14-year-old kid who's, has to play in the under 15s. You were born in December and you're playing against some guy who was born in January and he's 20 kilos and 6 inches taller than you are. I think that's really hard.
Yeah.
Something that Sam, you and I were talking about before we came on, and one of the major problems for a micro brand is, as you'll see in these groups online, you everybody buys this watch from this micro brand and they pay $300, $400, $500 for it. You can't. Now I'm a collector and I'm like, oh, I don't like it. I want to move it on. If I get $50 for it now, I'm doing good. And that becomes a problem because as I begin to continue to lose money with your watches, I'm less likely to buy one. I'd rather put it toward a name brand that I know that at least I'll get half my money back when I decide I want to move on and try a different watch. The curse of the micro brand is that once I own it, it's, be prepared to have it for life, even if you fall out of love with it.
Yeah, not just for Christmas. Yeah, you're right, because some of them are in that uncanny valley, aren't they, where they cost too much for you just to give it to somebody, but also you can't recoup. I mean, I wonder whether, Grand Seiko. I mean, I made that video on, taking a bath on Grand Seiko. Oh, I am now Grand Seiko free. I don't have any Grand Seikos. I don't have a single Grand Seiko in the collection now. But I actually have like 5 G-Shocks for some reason. But anyway, I forgot what I was too busy making a joke about Grand Seiko that I forgot what point I was making.
Did you sell your memory along with the G with the G-Shock?
Yeah, I was too busy getting on my high horse about Grand Seiko. Oh yeah, the resale value of them. Yeah, they are very they're in this uncanny valley of not being able to, you can't sell them, but also you don't want to give them away.
Yeah. There's a couple of little brands like Zelos that do wonderful. Like you could move those at the price you paid for them. I don't know if they're still micro brand or not.
You see, again, it's that interesting thing, isn't it? It's like when you look at a lot of these brands, what's a micro brand? And that's, the $1 million question for me, because for me, a micro brand is a small brand that generally is having to source parts from wherever they source them from, Asia, Switzerland, wherever, and they're putting together small numbers on a non-industrial basis, the non-serial production basis. They might do little batches or whatever, and they put them out there to the market. And actually, a micro brand doesn't, I think people think of micro brands as inexpensive, but it doesn't need to be inexpensive by any stretch of the imagination. Like our work when they started were definitely a micro brand, but they weren't cheap. So arguably would be folk like Konstantin Chaikin, not tiny volume, small pieces done. It's what nowadays most people would like to refer to as independence, because it sounds a bit hoity-toity, because people think that micro brand equals cheap, which it doesn't have to. Yeah. But an awful lot of these brands, Zelos make a lovely watch. There's plenty of them that I like. I would quite happily wear one. But most of these all have either formal or informal ties with much bigger behind-the-scene entities that are heavily industrialized and can crank volume out like nobody's business, which is why you can get such well-made watches for such little money. If you're a true micro brand, you can't do that. You physically cannot produce that volume at that quality for that little money. And it's because they've got the backup of a big facility, whether in China or Taiwan or somewhere in Asia, typically, that is doing that work as a bigger entity. And that's why it's a bit like Formex. Formex is a Swiss business that makes stuff in Switzerland, but there's a much bigger family business behind that brand that allows Formex to produce a really high quality watch at a very attractive price point. If he was trying to do that off his own bat, well, they would either be a lot more expensive or they just wouldn't exist.
Mhm.
No, yeah, no, totally agree. Any other brands that we're excited for this year? I mean, I'm always
I'd like to.
excited.
I'd like to see Breitling carry their momentum forward. I just don't know how they're going to, whether this will be a quiet year for them or not.
I think Breitling, you might see a new aerospace this year. I've been predicting it for 2 years. You might see a new aerospace this year. I'm pretty confident we'll see their new movement this year. The new three-hander. From what I understand, it's basically designed to fit the exact envelope of a 28-24. So the reason why Breitling haven't been using things like a Kinesi movement in more watches, one of the reasons is because every watch has been designed so that when their new movement comes, it just drops straight in. They don't have to mod the watches at all. So I think that'll probably come this year. I think George Hearns has flat out said it's going to happen, so I'm not being that inventive.
Yeah. I mean, Breitling have been trying for a good number of years to come up with their standard entry-level in-house movement that they can call their own. And I can tell you for a fact they've been diligently working in lots of avenues, and some of those things have fallen short at pretty much the finish line for a multitude of reasons. And that's why they still do use other stuff. Their deal with Kinesi is pretty specific as well. So, they don't have access. They've not got carte blanche by any stretch of the imagination at Kinesi. So can't just go, oh yeah, give me that movement, give me that movement. It is a reciprocal agreement they've got that allows them access to certain things in return for things that they give back. But there'll be, I think for most brands, Breitling included, it'll be pretty derivative this year. There'll be there might be some new dial colors. There might be a strap option or a bracelet option. There might be a different finish. I think there will be very little from anybody of anything genuinely new. Certainly not the big industrialized brands. The independent, the high-end independent, there's always scope for them to do something, because also they're selling to the rarefied air of people that have money and always have money, and even when everyone else has no money, they just get richer. So, the MB&Fs and out of this world, they'll bring out some crazy lunatic watch, 1 or 2 this year, as will most of these other brands, because they make a handful of them and they can sell them 5 times over if they wanted to. So I think that's where anything that's exciting will happen. I think most of the big brands, they'll either give us what they want, like Omega, a white Speedmaster. Folk have been calling out for that forever. They're going to deliver it. It's an easy, cheap fix for them. But I don't think there'll be anything particularly, oh my God, look at that.
I think
So go ahead, Pete.
I was going to say one trend I think we're going to see across the market is the stealth limited release or the stealth limited edition. And that is, and Grand Seiko started doing this a little bit, watches that are only available from the big sellers, models of watches that are only available online and often involve a pre-order. And so what they'll do is they'll say, here's it, exactly to Dave's point, like they want to drum up some press, they want to get someone talking about them. So they'll say, here's our new here's our Avenger for Breast Cancer Awareness Week in pink, e-com exclusive only, pre-order now. And they'll basically, if they get 200 orders, they'll make 200 and then that's it.
And no matter whether they make 2 or 200, it will, quote, sell out very quickly.
Exactly.
And
that's right.
It's all good press for them, and it mitigates their risk at the end of the day. So yeah, that's a lot of that will happen.
And the other benefit is it's all sold at full whack. There's no discount on an e-com.
Yeah,
or you'll see the brands pushing a narrative. If they have got something in production, they'll ink, and you'll begin to see this happen more and more. They'll ink an exclusivity deal with a given retailer. For example, we saw Grand Seiko dumped out 3 watches that were a Watch to Switzerland exclusive just in the last couple of months. But they'll tie those retailers in. You can have this exclusive, but you're going to buy this number, and you're going to buy them now, and you're going to pay for them now, and boom, you've got all of the stock and it's your deal, and we'll help you market it, but it's guaranteed business, and they can sell all of it to one retailer as a deal because they've got the exclusivity, which again protects them. So it's going to be lots of safe business. There's not going to be anything particularly risky done by anybody.
Yeah, what do
Yeah.
we think of this Thomas question? A question from Thomas member. Thank you, and thank you to all the new members that joined during the longer live stream as well. Very, very much appreciated. So, what do we think Moser will come up with in 2024? They discontinued a lot of their collection in 2023, so it'll be interesting to see what they come up with.
I don't follow the brand, so I can't
really
comment.
Well, they launched a couple of new things at the very back end of the year, and obviously, as much as their 2023 releases, they are 2024 sales because, you know, the sub-second Streamliner, for example, with the blue dial was launched right at the back end of the year. I think they announced it at Dubai Watch Week. The earliest deliveries are going to be in the first quarter of this year. So that is, for all intents and purposes, a 2024 business year for them. You know, that's where all the revenue will come in for that watch. So there's that. Again, it'll be lots of derivative stuff, you know, like, for example, the Streamliner center seconds green dial was discontinued last year when they announced the salmon dial one. I think from speaking to them, they only delivered the very last green one actually in December, even though they discontinued it back in March. So they still had, you know, volume to deliver, and they introduced the salmon dial one in March when they discontinued the green one, and it only just started delivering the first of those December, January. But they said it would only going to make it for a year, so it will get discontinued in March, April, and they'll come out with a new color. Again, very straightforward, very easy. There's a huge demand for that watch. There's a waiting list for them. They'll bring a new color out. It's a new dial. It's hardly, you know, setting the world on fire. They will probably do, you know, anything that they've had in long-term project. So if they have any new movements or they have any new derivative movements, whether it's, you know, perpetual calendars or any of these types of things, you'll see it come to fruition this year if it's ready, because it's a long format project. And you'll possibly see some of the movements that they introduced last year or the year before migrate into new case shapes. So like if it was in a Streamliner, it might appear in a Pioneer. If it was in a Pioneer, it might appear in a Streamliner. But I don't think you'll see anything huge from them. They're one of these funny brands. They're much bigger volume-wise than an MB&F. They get held to a degree in the same regard, but, you know, an MB&F is a X 100 units a year. Moser's a 3,000 unit a year brand. It's a very big difference of scale. Again, those guys, arguably, they're a well-known brand, but they're a brand that are in that dangerous category. They're wealthy, but they're not wealthy enough if it suddenly goes wrong on them. They need to just play it safe, and I think they will.
Yeah,
And their engineering group is probably not strong enough to hold them over on its own.
You know, everyone thinks precision engineering. You know, precision engineering are the movement manufacturer wing of Moser at the end of the day. You know, so if Moser fails, then ultimately precision engineering fails. And yes, they do supply hairsprings to the wider industry, but hairsprings, you know, hairsprings ain't going to keep a business afloat.
Yep.
Yeah. We've got another member question here from Sam. Dave, have you heard about L'Aventure?
L'Aventurine.
Yep.
L'Aventurine, yeah.
L'Aventurine, yes. I heard about these guys actually 2017, 2018, like way back when where was I? I'll tell you where I was. I was at a Red Bar event in Manchester, of all places, when they started getting going. And one of the guys who's involved with that brand is from in and about the greater Manchester area, and he had a prototype with them. And it's a good looking watch. Not my aesthetic, but really nicely made, good looking watch. And I think they've done a few things over the last couple of years, and they seem to be holding their value. I think it's because they make tiny numbers and they've got a bit of a cult status. So, you know, like it's a bit like lots of brands. They very rarely actually come up for sale. So when they do, someone will usually snap it up, or it'll get into a bit of a bidding war on eBay or whatever, because if you decide you want one and you're keeping your eye out for it, there's probably 2 or 3 other people that are doing the same. So when it eventually appears, you get this little bidding war, and they usually sell for about the same as you paid for them because they weren't crazy money to begin with. So, they've got a bit of a win-win for you there.
Awesome. Oh, thanks, Dave. Okay, well, we're nearly at time, but any of your last predictions, quick fire predictions for this year? I think I think the general consensus is going to be a quieter year.
A year of consolidation.
Yeah.
My last prediction is there will be a number of fire sales of brands from ADs as they lose their AD status. We've got at least 2. We've got 2 stores, two of the big stores where I live in Melbourne at the moment, where the reshuffling of what they're allowed to sell, particularly in light of a new brand boutiques opening up, has meant they're left holding hundreds of thousands of dollars of stock of brands they're not even permitted to advertise anymore. So if you keep an eye out for that, there are some serious bargains to be had.
And actually, Pete, you're absolutely right. But to compound that even further, for the last year and longer, the brands have been absolutely pummeling ADs with stock, because you want to keep your authorized dealership, you will buy this much stock. You will buy this much stock. Look how good the market is. Look how buoyant it is. Look how many people are into watches. Buy stock, buy stock, buy stock. And if they didn't buy stock, they lost AD. So, of course, they bought stock. Trade was relatively good, and trade has gone chunk. So now there is ADs who don't have the financial stability of some of the brands, are drowning in stock, and they're going to liquidate that stock to, at best, sometimes get back what they put into the stock in order to just keep their businesses afloat, frankly. And for that reason, you're right, you're going to potentially, as the year goes on, if it doesn't pick up and if rates don't drop, etc., you will see some particularly attractive prices, not maybe on the very latest model, but certainly on reasonably new, decent quality watches from the last 12, 24 months.
But will you see those online, or are we thinking you'd have to go into you'd have to befriend an AD? Because would that stock end up on Joma or other places?
It'll be a whole mixed bag. If folk have lost the AD or the dealership, then they're going to liquidate it however they can, to be honest, for the fastest amount of decent money they can get. So they don't care anymore what the brand thinks because they don't have a relationship. It's gone. Or if you're in store and you ask for can I have a deal, and you push for a deal, you're more likely than probably in the last few years to actually get a deal. And if it gets desperate enough, they will start to advertise, because you've got to keep the brand happy. But if it's a case of keep the brand happy or go bust, then you're not going to keep the brand happy. You're not going to go bust. That's just the reality of it. So the more pressure that becomes applied by the conditions in the market will dictate how desperate the retailers get. And also, it'll get to the stage where the brands, if they're not selling it, the brands won't sell back to the shop. If the brands aren't selling to the shop, they're in the proverbial as well. So they'll encourage anything to get that stock liquidated and through, because they want to sell more product.
Yeah. But I think you'll also see a trend in ADs closing as well. I think that's a big risk
because of this as well. Exactly.
Because of this, yeah.
The small ones just won't be able to. There's too many ADs that opened up during the boom year, shall we say, that don't have any stability, and that, unless they've been really smart about what they do, they'll be under pressure.
And that idea, and I completely agree, it'll be the smaller, not the big chain ADs that feel the most pressure, that want to do the dumping. But when they dump their stock, it'll be, and I'm going to use Brightline because I'm familiar with their brand, it'll be 4 Navatimers and 5 Avengers and 3 Premiers. So that won't even make a ripple on a place like Joma Shop. It'll be like little bits and pieces. So you're going to have this paradox of people saying, I can't get a discount anywhere, at the same time as people are saying, what are you talking about? I got offered 30% off on this because you were just in the right place at the right time with a guy going out of business.
Yeah.
And actually, you, for sure, you're right there. The only thing I would possibly take note on is some of the big retailers let's not name any names, but some of the big chain ones, some of them have got themselves into a, how shall we call it, a highly leveraged financial situation over the last few years, where it involves venture capitalists and various other investors who suddenly are seeing the downturn. And of course, those guys don't care about watches, they care about money. And they'll be like, okay, I want my money back. And the minute they start pulling back, or not even pulling back, just not adding money to the pit of burnt money they've already thrown it into, suddenly you'll see these businesses stress.
Yeah, so actually somebody's reporting that they saw a moon watch for treble for $4,650. I don't know if that's a good price, is it, in the UK?
For an Omega moon watch, yeah, that's the retail price from probably about 5 years ago. So yeah,
Oh,
that's
wow.
a pretty
That's
good
an
price.
excellent price.
Yeah.
I think the standard moon watch these days is nearly $7,000.
Wowzers! Wow.
So that white moon watch we're all looking for, start saving, because you won't be able to afford it.
Yeah, there's
You won't
actually
be able to afford it for a few months.
Yeah, I might only buy one watch this year. I'm starting to save for it. It's for a watch that's not been released yet from a brand that we have named, but I won't name them again. But so we'll keep it. But I'm going to try and not. Yeah, I'm going to try and tighten the purse strings.
And to be honest, it's a sensible thing. I think the best advice you can give anyone at the moment is, everyone's broadly speaking in the same boat. Like I don't think many folk listening to this. I don't know. Maybe there are some billionaires listening to this, but probably not. The reality is, think long and hard about what you're going to spend your money on, because it's going to be one of those years for everybody where if you want to keep buying watches, it's happy days. But yeah, think long and hard, and maybe just avoid buying those little ones that whet your appetite, because it's another 3 weeks of saving to get what you actually want.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. Cool. Well, that was awesome. Well, thanks so much to the panel. Thank you for everyone being so active in the comments. Very much appreciated. Thank you to all of the new members. If you want to become a member, you can sign up in the link in the description down below. And yeah, we'll
don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that thumbs up button.
Exactly. Thank you. Yes, all of those things as well.
And that's just Mark's OnlyFans account.
Well, the agony I go through keep my toenails in condition, you wouldn't believe it.
It's okay. I'll throw some more I'll throw some more skin cream into the pit shortly, Mark. Don't worry about it.
Let's end this before this goes south a little bit more. Thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.